All right. So, did you like the video yesterday? And Johnson, are we going today?
Well,
Yeah.
Wait.
do you have to wait?
I'm recording. So, why don't you let me teach for a few minutes? And then I'll turn it over to you.
Okay.
Okay.
We all got excited.
Okay. Now, do you have like a PowerPoint or something that I'm going to use? Or
Yeah.
I need to
Can I-
find it?
Yeah. Well, it's the one that I turned in not work.
Okay. Yeah, it'll work. I just
Okay.
got to find it.
Okay. I tried finding it on Canvas, but it doesn't show up in the files.
Okay. You send it to me a canvas.
I can look it up. I can probably call it my OneDrive.
Let me look.
Okay.
All right. Canvas.
I wish that's
What's his name?
Oh,
I thought you just said
I got it.
I was like,
I got it.
Sweet.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the video yesterday showed you what happened in North Africa. Okay. And it went all the way through the Battle of Kasserine Pass,
Oh yeah, I guess.
where we got defeated by the Germans. The biggest setback of the war by the Americans as far as territory goes. They talk about Patton
Yes.
coming to power because Hodges was, not getting the job done.
I don't think it mentioned Hodges.
Okay. Well, guys, after we lost at Kasserine Pass, they put Patton in charge of the U.S. First Army. Okay, and he would stay general of the First Army until he had that army taken away. Okay, because he got in trouble. Yeah, I'll tell that story later. When we get to Italy, I'll tell that story. Okay. So guys, in the end, we're going to win the Battle of North Africa. Guys, listen, we're going to capture 250,000 German troops in Tunisia. Okay, we won't capture close to 2,500 Japanese during the entire war. We captured 250,000. Okay. Now, what do we do with these German troops?
Interrogate them. Convert them into American.
What are you going to do with them? You know what we're going to do with a lot of them? We're going to send them to the United States and build prisoner of war camps in places like Concordia, Kansas. They built a prison up there, prisoner of war, and the German prisoners would march out of the prison in the morning and go work on the farms in Kansas. And then in the evening, they'd march back into the POW camp. And when the war was over, we allowed them to go back home. And many of them went home and their families were gone. I mean, this was a world war, okay? But from what I've read in these prisoner of war camps in the United States, which there were about, 10 or 12, where we housed these German POWs, we had relatively very few incidences of issues, problems with them. A lot of them were glad they were out of the war, okay? And they were getting 3 meals a day and a safe place to eat. Yeah.
how many people were in one of the camps?
I've never been up there. I've read about it. I think there was something like 5,000 or something like that. It's a historic site up there today. You can go visit it. I think Skaggs has been up there. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. Now, what is also interesting about this, some of your ancestors came here, German ancestors came here in the early part of the century, and they were working on farms in Kansas, and they still spoke German when the war was going on. And so you had German POWs going out and working on German immigrants' farms in Kansas, speaking German to each other, which made non-German farmers somewhat uneasy, as you can imagine. So it's a really kind of interesting thing to study. Is these POW camps in the States, okay? Now, last thing I talked about was Mo Berg. And yeah, so a couple other stories with Mo Berg. I told you about how he took the photographs. And this is my son in the background. Can you see his
Yes. He looks
reflection?
very happy.
This is at the Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. Okay. You and Mom or Michelle, yeah, you guys went off. Will you turn on that light, please? Now, so with that, guys, Moberg, well, let me tell you about one of his other missions. I think, Lily, you might know about this one. In 1944, he quit being a catcher and went full-time with the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. And they sent him to Austria, and he was posing as like a graduate school student with, or intern with Texaco Oil. And remember, he spoke several languages. One of those was German. And so he went to this conference where the lead atomic scientist for Germany, whose name is Werner Heisenberg. Heisenberg, say my name.
Break it back.
Was giving a speech. You know it too, Heisenberg? Okay. Breaking Bad?
You know, I heard of
Best TV show.
Best TV show ever.
It's true.
Okay. So Mr. White becomes Heisenberg. Anyhow, he's given a speech, this German scientist, nuclear scientist. And Moberg is given a pistol and a suicide pill. And if the Germans are close to building the atomic bomb, his job is to assassinate Werner Heisenberg. If not, then he doesn't assassinate him. If he's captured or found out that he's a spy, well, that's what the suicide pill's for. So he goes to this conference and hears his speech. Not a lot to gather from that speech, but he goes to a cocktail party afterwards, and he's eavesdropping. He's listening into Heisenberg's conversation. And he hears Heisenberg say, "It's too bad Germany's already lost the war." And this is mid-1944. And so the pistol and the suicide pill will go unused. Okay, but that was one of his missions. Okay, so, and he had quite a few during the war. All right, so Moberg, like I said, there's that book called The Catcher and the Spy. All right, that if you're interested in this story, and there's a lot of good spy stories from World War II, some British ones as well. Watched a movie on Netflix not too long ago about some British spies that went into France. Actually, it was actually a woman that did this. Pretty good. I forget the name. It was a new release on Netflix, so you might be able to. Their new releases stay for like 6 months, so you'll probably be able to find it. Okay, so back into the Pacific. Okay, remember, what kind of defense are we playing in the Pacific? Oh, you guys are good. Okay, so one of the places, remember, Australia is our Britain in the Pacific, yes?
Yes.
And as the Japanese move further south, they start to build an airstrip down here on this island in the Solomon called Guadalcanal. And they also try and take this port on the southeastern tip of New Guinea. Okay? If they take this port, they will be able to launch attacks throughout the Coral Sea against our Navy. And being able to supply or get supplies from Australia will be very limited. So, as a force of Japanese carriers moves south, we have broken their naval code to some extent. We know this is about to happen. So the United States counterattacks with Task Force 17, which includes the Yorktown and the Lexington, 2 aircraft carriers. The Japanese will have 3 aircraft carriers there. Okay? And guys, this is the first time in naval history or military history that you will see an aircraft carrier versus aircraft carrier battle. These are rare, and that none have taken place since World War II. Okay? So, this book I have, where'd she go? There she is. Describes this Battle of the Coral Sea quite eloquently. And so, if you will, permit me to read this to you. Okay? The first ever carrier clash. The first major sea engagement between fleets far out of sight of each other was joined in the spring of 42. It began on May 4th when a Japanese force shielded by 3 carriers threatened to occupy Port Moresby. Hurrying to counterattack came Task Force 17, Lexington, and Yorktown. For the first 24 hours, Task Force 17 and the Japanese groped for each other like blindfolded wrestlers. Then, search planes on both sides found targets. Carrier-based Japanese pilots sank the U.S. destroyer Sims and mortally wounded the tanker Neosho. That is down here. Okay? American pilots had even greater success. Scratch one flat top, a U.S. squadron leader radioed back to the Lexington. Scratch one flat top. As the 12,000-ton Shoho aircraft carrier sunk. Okay? The next morning, on the 5th, both fleets almost simultaneously launched their fighters, dive bombers, and torpedo planes. The aerial armada, 70 Japanese planes versus 83 American aircraft. They pass each other without seeing each other, and then about 11 a.m., swarm down on their enemies' nests for 45 furious minutes. Now, you want to talk about a bad feeling? Being on a ship in the middle of the sea with a bunch of enemy aircraft attacking your ship. That's not a good feeling. There's nowhere to hide. Okay? The box score favored Japan. Both Task Force 17's carriers were hit. The Lexington fatally. But in overall effect, the Coral Sea battle was to prove the war's first decisive check to Japanese southward expansion. This is the first time anybody stopped them. They would call off the Port Moresby invasion for good, as it turned out. Moreover, 2 big Japanese carriers, the Shoakaku and the Ziyakaku, were badly damaged in this battle, and they had to limp home to Japan to be refitted or repaired. Those 2 carriers and the Shoho would be sorely missed a month later at the decisive Battle of Midway. So, in a span of 2 days, we have disabled 3 Japanese carriers. They will sink the Lexington. Now, this is what the Lexington looks like. Is anybody taking notes? Okay. That's, you envision this right here? Now, see this explosion? Torpedoes from a Japanese sub. Okay? They hit the part of the carrier that was holding the carrier's torpedoes. So their torpedoes hit our torpedo. That's what causes this explosion. Okay? There are just about 3,000 sailors on this ship when this explosion takes place. How many do you think died?
All 4,000.
Reading from the caption of this picture in this book. Okay? A tremendous mushroom cloud billows up from the carrier USS Lexington after Japanese torpedoes set off the ship's own torpedoes. By late afternoon, the crew had to abandon ship. Their departure was as disciplined as a routine drill. Although 216 men, only 216 men, died as a result of that battle, the other 2,735 sailors and a dog, the captain's Cocker Spaniel, went over the side without one drowning. These carriers have other ships that accompany them. You have cruisers, destroyers that go along with the task force, okay? And so they were able to pull these men out of the water before they drowned, okay? That was not the fate of the USS Indianapolis later in the war. USS Indianapolis, while we're talking about men being in shark-infested waters, was given a secret mission to deliver the first atomic bomb to Tinian Island. They did not know what was on board their ship. The sailors did not know. And they were not accompanied by any other ships because they did not want to be noticed by the Japanese. They were sneaking it in. They successfully delivered the bomb and then were leaving Tinian Island. And as they were leaving, they were supposed to. These are not only shark-infested water, but Japanese-infested submarine waters, okay? They're supposed to serpentine or zigzag, okay, not go in a straight line. And the captain of the ship chose not to zigzag. And a Japanese submarine launched torpedoes into the USS Indianapolis. This is not a carrier. This is a destroyer, I believe. It sunk. There were about 500 men on board. Nobody knew the Indianapolis had sunk. Nobody knew where the Indianapolis was. And so these men went into the water. This is one of the more horrifying stories of the war. You guys know how sharks can smell blood. And so they're floating on pieces of the ship and, you know, different things. And some of them just with life jackets. And the sharks came. And I don't know an exact number, but more than 100 of the sailors were eaten by sharks. And the others had to watch as that took place, hoping they were not the next victim. I mean, it's tragic. The captain of the ship survived, and he was put on trial and was blamed for this. He was convicted. He killed himself in prison. Okay. Yes, there's a movie called The USS Indianapolis with Nicolas Cage in it.
I watched it.
Yes, Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas Cage is in that movie.
And it's not very good. It's not a really good movie. You know, I mean, I watched it because I said, oh, USS Indianapolis, you know, kind of like Midway. Oh, Midway, this is going to be great.
Actually, the Midway back in May.
The first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back
Yeah.
in
Yeah, I have that one at home. Oh, I think it's black and white. Is it
early color.
Okay, maybe late 60s.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay. This is an aerial photograph of the Battle of Coral Sea. You can see the puffs of smoke. This is anti-aircraft fire. Okay, not clouds. And so this is the Ziyakaku, one of the Japanese carriers. Okay. Ziyakaku, and I think this is the Shokaku up here. Okay. So, in the interest of allowing a presentation to get done today, I will cover the Battle of Midway. Dang, guys, I'm going again on Monday.
Me too.
I've got service project in
We
my
watched
house.
the national.
Me too.
We watched the.
No.
Washington.
Are you coming with my house?
How about Midway? Did you guys like that video yesterday? It's pretty good production value. No, Ella's shaking her head. No.
Can we watch the one you just talked about that you said was bad?
No.
USS Indianapolis?
No.
Yes.
Please, no.
What, you want to see like carnage?
I would rather see the new Midway. Can we watch Midway? Can we watch Midway then? The new one?
I don't have it. I don't have it. What's after Midway? Let me see what I got in the notes here.
I can't believe that's on the history channel.
There's a.
What is going
Oh,
on?
we should watch the Pacific. Is what we should watch.
No, we can't watch that.
Why not?
The first one.
Well, that's North Africa finishing up. It's Sicily.
We could finish the
Because
Pearl
they're
Harbor.
not
Second
doing
one was like-
No, I don't even have that anymore. Guys, I may show you one of my videos. We got to get through this. You want to learn about civil rights and the 60s and 70s?
We should watch the Pacific Battle Ball now, that first episode.
Ella.
The White
Yes,
Sox
Ella.
are winning.
Who? What?
White Sox are winning.
Oh, sweet. Let's score.
3-0.